Okay, so this video is going to be a quick guide on how to program. This is mainly for those of you that are beginners, but maybe you've been training for a while and you've never really had any structure. This might also help. Now, the main thing we really need to consider is how to make sure that we hit every single part of our body. Okay, make sure that every single muscle gets worked within our weekly program. So the key movement patterns really that we're trying to look for, make sure we have at least one movement in 4, is going to be your horizontal push and pull, your vertical push and pull, your knee and hip dominant squats, and then your knee flexion and your hip extension. Now, the way that we perform our squats can make it a little bit more quad or hip dominant, but we'll go into that in a little bit. But as long as you have at least one exercise from each of these main groups, you should be able to hit every single part of your body that you really need. So now let's look at the actual movements for each of those categories. So a horizontal push, your main movement would be like your bench press. Then we're looking at like a vertical push, which might be shoulder press, and then vertical pull would be lat pull down, and horizontal pull would be a bent over row. So just trying to at least get one of those in. I'm not going to list through all of them, and there'll be guides on how to perform these exercises either coming up on my YouTube or from other YouTubers. Just find one that works for you. Then in terms of our leg exercises, knee dominant and hip dominant squats would be like your high bar squat for your knees, especially if we're doing like heel elevated. Heel elevated is exceptionally good for our quads. You just need to think about at the bottom of the movement to make sure you're hitting your quads is your hamstrings crushing your calves at the bottom, okay? And we don't want our hips to raise up first. Otherwise we're going to be working a little bit more of our hip. And that's why a low bar squat tends to be a little bit more hip dominant. And then the other side of things, knee flexion, hip extension. So you got your leg curl for your knee flexion, hip extension, things like RDLs, hip thrusts, and deadlifts. So again, trying to make sure that you have at least one of those in every session, maybe at least a couple times in the week. Now, the way I'm going to be looking at the programming today is just going to be based off of how many days you're able to train. There are a lot of nuances that go into going into programming, especially when I'm working with new clients. It's all about like figuring out what their goals are and how we can achieve that. But in general, this is going to be a pretty rough guide for you guys out there. So if you're only training, for example, 1 to 3 days, this is kind of the process that I would want. So when you see it says 1A and 1B, that means it's a superset. So you're going to do your bench press, do a heavy set of bench press, then you have a 30-second rest, maybe a minute, and then bent over row. I'm not going to go too deep into like the sets, reps, and rest too much. Mainly like your rest is like, I want it to at least be like 30 seconds, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's also a little bit time dependent, but 30 seconds tends to be a minimum in between. And then we're going into our leg exercises. So we're going heel elevated squat and hip thrust, then down into shoulder press, lat pull down, and then leg curl, leg extension. Now, the thing to know about the bottom there, 4A and 4B, is that you can swap that out depending on what your goals are. So for example, if you care a little bit more about your upper body and maybe your arms, then you could swap that out for like bicep curls and tricep extensions. Now, the thing to mention with this is that when we do each session, so day 1, we could follow it exactly like it's written here. Day 2, what you might want to do is switch the movements around a little bit. So putting your heel elevated squats first, so doing your main leg exercise first, and then doing your upper body. Because obviously as you go through a session, you get more and more fatigue. So at the start of a session, when you're feeling freshest, that means like the exercise at the start is probably going to get more out of it compared to the exercises towards the end. So just what we want to try and do is day 1, have it like, let's say exactly like this. Day 2, mix it up, and then day 3, you could go back to how you did it on day 1. It also depends on your goals. If you just care really about your bench press, then put that at the start of every single session. So now if you can train 4 days a week, I would recommend doing upper lower split. Now you see like the sets and reps here. So 3 sets of 5 for our first 2 lifts, and then 3 sets of 10 after that. The reason we're doing 5 reps there is so that we get a nice mix of like strength / hypertrophy, especially in our compound lifts. We're trying to like teach our body to basically work effectively under load, and that's just going to help you in the long run. If you only care about hypertrophy, then maybe just doing 10 reps is good, but I do feel like mixing things up really helps. And then again, same process is like we're partnering our upper body movements with partnering a chest press and then a bent over row, so that we're working like agonist and antagonist. And that way we're kind of like, whenever we're doing the bench press, we're resting from the row. Whenever we're doing the row, we're resting from the bench press. So it means you don't have to leave as much space in between. It's more time saving and you just get more in, depending again on your time. And then similar process to the lower body. 3x5s and then going into 3x10s. Again, the 10 reps doesn't have to be exact. As long as you're working close to failure, it could go up to like 15, 20. It doesn't really matter. I just do find that in between like 8 to 12 is like the sweet spot for hypertrophy, because as long as you get to failure, it doesn't really matter, but you're just going to achieve the same thing in half the time if I'm doing 8 reps compared to 16. And then for day 3 and day 4, you notice again, I've mixed up the exercises a little bit. So that's just to try and make sure that we're not just like using all of our energy at the start for the same exercise every single time. So we're not just doing flat bench at the start of every single exercise. We're not just doing squat for the start. So this time we have deadlifts as our main lift, deadlifts and front squats, and then lat pull downs and incline dumbbell bench press. Okay, so that's how I would do it if I was training 4 days a week. And then finally, this is how I used to train. If you have time for it, I think this is like the best way, in my opinion, especially if you're new, to like try and get as much volume in over time and try and really see how much you can like improve. So with 6 days, we're going to do push, pull, legs, push, pull, legs. So we're going to do day 1 will just be push. So this is just going to be chest and tricep exercise, basically. So you're going to really feel fatigued at the end. So making sure that you put your most important exercises at the start of these sessions is even more important, because if I do a less important exercise and my chest starts getting tired, it means that when I go into my bench press, if I put my bench press later into it, it just means that it's not going to be as beneficial. And then day 2 would be, as you can see, like more of a pull based. So trying to work on the back and the biceps. And then on day 3, we'll finish with our legs. Again, the one thing to note with the way that this is formatted is you'll notice that it's 3x5, then 3x10, then 3x5, 3x10. This is because if we try and do both the compound lifts, like 3x5 at the start, because it's going to be the same muscle group, it's going to be like really, really tough to like push through. So it's better to like do a compound with an accessory and then a different compound with a different accessory. Now, I'm not going to show you the other like 3 days because it's the same process as before. We just swap over the like main exercises. You put whatever's most important at the top. But in essence, like you can do the exact same exercises. You can do it in the same order if you want, but I would recommend like swapping over the main exercises at the start of the session. So there you have it. It's a very, very rough guide because I wanted to keep it short and sweet. So you can just like pause the video depending on how many training days you have, write down what I've written here. And then when you go in to do your sessions, make sure you're writing down the exercises, writing down how much you lift in each session, and just trying to improve a little bit every single week. When you're brand new, you might be able to improve like 5-10%, but just being able to improve 1% every single week is going to be like amazing in the long run, as long as you're consistent. So just make sure you're tracking, and again, use these exercises and this format as a rough guide for yourself, and then change it dependent on your goals and as you get a little bit more experience. But good luck. If you want any more like specific advice, please give me a message and I will help you out.